My biggest problem with side proposition speech is that it's massively lacking in any form of link backs. That's to say, how do the rational consumer that they like to portray, how do they benefit from any of these things they talk about? What's the link back and significance of privacy? What's the link back from lack of options? They don't talk about any of these things, and unless they can prove to you and that there's any form of real tangible harms that we will not tackle down in this speech, then they simply cannot win this debate. Moving on to my stances, what are our stances? As opposition, we will stick to the status quo of the big trends of tech companies doing mergers, yes, but because, secondly, it's progressive, that there's reaching more smarter consumers, more government control, and precisely because of that, we shouldn't ruin this flow of progressiveness. Our goal in this debate being that significantly we want consumer protection, a better market, and more effective market for everyone. But at the very least, if we can't do that, we want some form of consumer protection. The PM has given a successful attempt of portraying the world as this evil, where society gains nothing from mergers, that as a rational consumer, like they said, there's nothing for us here. But if there really isn't there, then why would these things be happening in the first place? It's not just easy as corporate greed, like they also like to mention. There's more things than that, and that's what we want to portray as side opposition. Moving on to my rebuttals. First of all, under principal analysis, they mention how these things inherently breach the consumer's privacy, that there's a breach there, and that's why it's not justified. What do we say to this? 3 responses. First of all, it's not inherently true that as we say that as soon as you download the app, you accept that terms of service. That's enough of consent to actually show that you've consented. But secondly, even if when the mergers do happen, right, you still gain they still notify you with the new terms of service, like the massive one that happened a couple months ago. Even if that doesn't happen, we are a rational consumer, right? Like that knows the inner workings, and precisely because of that, we would know that as soon as a merger happens, that there would be new services, terms of services in place. Thus, our consent is not inherently breached. But secondly, they never explain the significance of privacy. Has there ever been any case where the breach of privacy led to someone's death? There's not such an. Even look at Chinese citizens in a surveillance state that they do not care about privacy being taken, and they never mention to you the significance that this is not a significant trade-off when we look at the positives of these things that we will mention in our speech. However, then, even if consumers do feel unsatisfied, what do we say to that? They have the freedom to sue, as this criminal justice system lets them. That they have a way to actually voice out their concerns and unsatisfaction in a proper CJS system. But then they mentioned to you that there's less options and the market domination, and why do we say that doesn't happen? 2 main arguments. First of all, this is a capitalist market, that these corporations are justified in pursuing these things in the pursuit of profit and more control, and they never address to you why they should not do these things in the first place, and that's what they were trying to argue against. They should not do that. But secondly, it's not that easy to just dominate a market entirely. As you get bigger, right, you become bigger, or competitors also become bigger. Look at it this way. MySpace was the big thing, and then what happened? It fell instantly. Facebook got massive. BlackBerry was big, and then iPhone got big. There's just too volatile of a market where in total dominance doesn't happen. Even now, Facebook doesn't control the entirety of the tech industry. There's Facebook, YouTube, there's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's more, but there's many things that got bigger as soon as you also got bigger. There's not one dominance that they so like to portray. Then why do we think that smaller? Why do we say that smaller? Why do we say that the innovation isn't actually harm, right? Look at it this way. When Facebook and Instagram got successful, did you think our options as consumers ceased to exist? That innovation suddenly stopped? That's not how that worked. Look at where Facebook got stories, where Facebook got filters. It's through Instagram, and where did they get it? Through innovations of Snapchat. That even if Facebook got big, Snapchat still tried to innovate through filters. That Instagram still tried to innovate, and these innovations still happen for us consumers. That we still have options at the end of the day. Now, moving on to my substantive. First of all, under principal analysis, what do we say? Why does these things do more good than harm? Then, as a rational consumer that can understand the inner workings, it's not justified for us to regret this thing, the mergers of these companies. On the first argument, how do these mergers benefit society more? Well, first of all, it diversifies products within one source. Right? It gives you more options. For example, when Tokopedia got mergers of companies, as a consumer, you can get more types of diverse products through Tokopedia. Same way when Amazon stopped being a bookstore and getting more companies, you can get cheaper options from Amazon, making it much easier for you as a consumer. But secondly, there's better quality control for products when it comes from centralized quality checkers. That's to say that it's much easier for a centralized authorized figure that's actually powerful to make sure the good quality products go to the consumers as needed, instead of from separate people who aren't as trustworthy. But then, worker qualities and more workers can come, leading to more economy. For example, when mergers happen, they just don't somehow get rid of all workers. They will need more workers because they'll have more things to manage. They need more maintenance, and they will need more staffers in general, making that the job market will be much bigger when mergers do happen. Then under second analysis, why is these things doable and should continue to be done? You have to recognize that it's strategic economically for these businesses, where to gain more advantage by these businesses, they need to expand their vision. Gojek can reach as far as India, Singapore, gaining more influence because of mergers. Where TikTok deal with Oracle and Walmart expanded their market through the US. That is beneficial for these businesses and for competition, and they should be continue to do this because of the impacts, which segues me to my next principle analysis. Why is this better, and what's the significant impacts of mergers? First of all, precisely because the businesses get bigger, right? They get more influence, it leads to more income, means more returns on investment, precisely for countries like Indonesia with Gojek, where they invested in Gojek. What leads to more country income, right, from Gojek and for Indonesia, and at the end of the day, that leads to more infrastructure and more benefits for society as a whole. Then secondly, it gives inspiration to new and upcoming entrepreneurs, like Indonesia, where people now want to make startups and more inspired because of the massive success they saw in Gojek. That made them, if that can get that big as that small, then I can do it too. Then the companies that are on the verge of death, right, for example, like that have no hope, they can be helped because they think that at least, oh my god, if I'm about to die, I can be acquired by this company, giving me some form of success and safety for the time being. Then moving on to my practical substantive, how does the status quo protect three things: healthy competition, consumers, and the good and healthy investment? How does it protect healthy competition? Three main arguments. First of all, you have to understand the unpredictability of the tech industry. MySpace was on top, then Facebook, boom, just out of nowhere, it got big and got big. Zoom, for example, got massive all of a sudden. There will always be that form of counterbalance because consumers always want something new. They always want, and the new things don't come from massive things like side government said. It comes from smaller companies, and these things gives that form of competition. Always looking at the new thing that gets big, and smaller companies get big. But secondly, a progressive society that wants to invest and buy into promising startups, creating the competition is actually helpful. But thirdly, the motivation gain when you as an entrepreneur sees the success of these massive companies, like I've said before. But then, how do you protect consumers, right, in this motion? Which is two things, where firstly, antitrust laws and increasing progressiveness in society, where government now is actually caring about these things, where they haven't for the past years or so, where Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg are being called into Congress, where they have to actually take accountability, where government starts to educate themselves and actually care about this. And secondly, and precisely because of that, it's much easier when the source is much centralized through merger. Testing, applying government regulation, etc. is much easier when it's one body, where it's Amazon and all of its companies inside of it, instead of separately going after each one like they would have if it were a merger. Lastly, why is proper healthy investment still happen under our side? Investments, you have to understand, that happens through innovation, that they're not going to go for bigger companies because it's expensive for less. It's about the new big thing that's current small right now that has massive potential. And mergers doesn't do that, like PM said. Thus, the healthy investment from smaller companies still happen. Side opposition will be the only side to properly contextualize a real healthy and realistic reality I'm so proud to oppose.